While your day is winding down, they're just getting started. This is South Coast Tonight with Chris McCarthy and Marcus Farrow. They've got you covered on all the news of the day, from local issues to politics on both sides of the aisle. This is the place where the movers and shakers come to be heard, to listen, and where they're held accountable. This is South Coast Tonight on WBSM.
Welcome to South Coast Tonight. I'm Marcus Farrow.
I'm Chris McCarthy.
And we're joined by New Bedford Mayor Jon Mitchell.
Great to be with you guys. It feels like I was just here.
You literally were just,
I was.
Right, 12 hours ago. Right?
What time is it now? 7?
Yeah.
Yeah, so about 7 hours ago. Yeah.
What have you done in that time span? How did you spend your day?
I was
just waiting around.
Just chilling.
That's how I spend my day sometimes, just waiting around for South Coast Tonight.
Fort Phoenix, picking up cans.
So, you talked a little bit about the state of the city. You have the State of the City address next week, and you talked a little bit about it with Tim. But what you didn't answer is like who's going to be there. Because it's kind of like it can be kind of like a who's who in terms of, and last year was an election year, so we had a lot of people there from all over the place, right? But is there anybody that from the statewide offices that is going to be there? Anybody that we wouldn't expect?
Well, I hope it was be good enough for you just to have all non-celebrities.
No, I'm going to be there either way.
Is Jeff Deal going to be there?
Yeah, no, it is like, well, no, the thing is like there's.
If he orders food, Jeff Deal.
There's a little bit. You got to comp the ticket and Jeff Deal goes.
Count the silverware.
So it depends on how big the tip is, right?
Right. Georgia.
So no, but I'm saying there's pageantry to this stuff. And that's why I'm asking. He's talked about the substance. I'm asking about the pageantry.
I don't. So I don't think so. I mean, last year there were a number of statewide candidates, right?
Yeah,
because it was a state election year. So I don't think so. It is the second biggest. We understand it to be that it is the second biggest State of the City address in Massachusetts, if not New England, and that's the reason for that is. Largely because, well, two reasons. One, because there's a tradition of it being a big event here in the Chamber of Commerce. But the other reason is that the cities that are bigger than us almost all of them tend to hold their State of the City addresses in city council chambers.
Yeah.
So that's why, so you can't fit 500 people in those places.
Right. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. But it's good. I think the way we do it's better. It's hard to do with just a general audience, especially in the middle of the day. That's why the lunch is a little bit of a hook, right?
Sure, of course.
But it is. So, but it works. I think it works pretty well because, it's an opportunity to talk to a lot of people. There's a good media contingent there.
It's great for the city.
I think it's really good for the city.
Really good for the city.
Yeah.
Are you going to, last year you had made an announcement that really annoyed the city council about the $5 million to the Z. I'm wondering if you have any other announcements that are going to have a similar effect.
You'd like to make here.
$5 more million to the
and then just turn to the table and just wink at them. Yeah.
Just kidding. No. I'll have some announcements. I don't think that I don't think we'll have any along those lines. I think the council. Last time it was a little bit of we had the council, if you recall, last year took a while to accept the ARPA funds, right, from the the federal government, and so they did not long, just within it was like a couple weeks before the State of the City address, and there had been coincidentally there had been a change in the ARPA regulations that was about to go into effect, like right after the city council approved or accepted the ARPA funds, that would have precluded our giving much money to the Z for the Z's big improvement project. Just as a reminder, the Z is a city-owned building, right? It's an important anchor institution, a cultural institution, it educates kids and all that stuff, but it's also, to the extent we put money into it, we're putting our money into an asset that the taxpayers own.
Yeah.
So there really wasn't a whole lot of time to like get the word out about why we're doing it. So what didn't make, I think some people thought, well, why is the first chunk of money you're spending in ARPA funds on the Z? And that's why it was just, we had to get it in under the interim, during the period in which the interim rule was in effect.
Okay.
So, but no, I don't think we'll be hearing anything about that. I will talk about ARPA funds and just how much other money we've been able to leverage, either private sector money or state or other federal money we've been able to leverage with the spending that we have done, because it is considerable.
So we're speaking with New Bedford Mayor Jon Mitchell. So one of the things, I don't know if you covered this with Tim today, but I think it's important because I literally one time spent an entire show on this. We got enough call volume and all of that to spend an entire show on this subject. But DATCO's canceled their South Coast bus routes on April 16th. There was some work to get those bus routes, and you were harshly critical of them for doing so and doing so abruptly. But you were able to come to a solution to that. Can you tell us more?
Yeah. So the state delegation and I weighed in on it, and I think we've got a good result in the end with Peter Pan. If you remember, you guys probably you do, Chris.
Yeah.
Remember, Peter Pan used to be the service provider.
Absolutely.
between Boston and New Bedford years ago.
For years. I used to take it back from Amherst.
Yeah.
So
That's a long bus ride.
it was a long bus ride.
Yeah. So Peter Pan's still around. They're going to be filling in for DATCO. The key here is really at least to have service between New Bedford and Boston up until the point where the train service starts, which is scheduled for late this calendar year. So look, DATCO. The thing that irked me about DATCO was just how abruptly they did it. They didn't call the city.
Right.
Right.
I'm not saying they should call the city just out of respect, although that's certainly a consideration. It's like, if you gave us the heads up, we could work to fill in the gap. So it kind of left us scrambling, let other officials.
The VP also had some sort of pouty, childish comment about it. It said like, well, the elected officials had made it clear that they like rail and they don't like us, or something like that. And it's like, I don't think anybody ever said rail is going to come at the exclusion of any other transportation service. It was just something that we're excited for.
No, it's a little bit of a CYA comment. So at least he acknowledged that he didn't give. They didn't give the heads up to the city, which is, I guess they had to acknowledge that. But look, it's a privately owned, privately operated bus service, and like any other private entity, you can't begrudge them if they want to cut back because they're not making a profit, right?
Absolutely.
It's just they're providing a public service, and as such, they do owe the public some obligation, I would submit, to say, hey, heads up, everybody, just so you can adjust your schedules. We're really sorry to tell you we're not going to be doing this route anymore. They didn't do that. So, but all's well that ends well. It's Peter Pan's in place. There aren't as many options. There won't be as many rides, but I think it'll be good enough to get us through to the end of the year.
Why did Peter Pan decide to, like, it's not lucrative for DATCO, but it'll be lucrative for them?
I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know. I thought they could step in, but I don't. It's not obvious to me. I mean, DATCO may have had other issues with. I don't know. I don't know. There's other costs that Peter Pan doesn't have.
Yeah, sure. So we're speaking with New Bedford Mayor Jon Mitchell. So one of the other things that I wanted to talk to you about is you talked a little bit about body cams, I think with Tim maybe last week, but basically I think there's Fall River's got body cams now. I've heard about, I remember having Tony on back when I was still on Saturdays, which is a while ago now, talking about how there was money secured for police body cams. And I know you're, using some available monies to make some improvements on public safety equipment. So, are we at a juncture where we're going to see body worn cameras on police officers in New Bedford?
Yes. Yeah, we will see them. There isn't much in the way of state funds. That would be nice to get state funds, but that's really sort of a pittance. But all that said, it really is a matter of our being able to negotiate it with the police union, and we are doing that. So we'd like to be able to get to that point, but they've got to say yes to it, and we're in the middle of negotiations with them.
I thought the police union wanted body cams.
They didn't. When they said they wanted them,
they wanted to negotiate.
They didn't tell you the price.
Right.
Right.
It's like it's a negotiation, right? So, so if they said the price was zero, then and you don't have to negotiate anything else, right? Then they'd have them on now, because I think we do have the money to do it. It's really the personnel costs, and because the police department has been running a surplus because of the staffing shortage we've had, we can use some of those funds to take care of the personnel costs associated with running body cameras. So it's all possible. I think the police do want to see them, but like with everything else with public sector unions, it's subject to negotiation.
So we're speaking with New Bedford Mayor Jon Mitchell.
So speaking of shortage on the police department, I know that problem has come up and you guys are working on it. Yeah. You instrumented some bonuses, things like that. How's that going so far? No, recognizing it's not an overnight solution anyway, but how's that going so far?
Yeah, I think it's too early to tell. As you know, the hiring of police officers in Massachusetts is subject to the civil service rules, in which prospective candidates have to go through an application process and select where they want to go, and there are lists that are submitted of prospective candidates to the city or town not to choose from per se, but to work down, and it's all based on the applicant test scores and other metrics, and then everybody who goes through it has to be screened, and so there's a whole lot of screening that goes on, public criminal background checks and credit checks and other interviews, and so there's a great weeding out of candidates who shouldn't be police officers, and the problem these days is that there aren't that many people who want to become police officers. It's just a very unfortunate reality. There isn't quite a crisis yet, but there is the trends among 20-somethings when it comes to public service or the interest in traditional public service roles is ominous. So you look at, we've talked about it before, like police staffing is a big problem across the country, across urban police departments, but also some suburban, but primarily urban, right? Because the jobs just there's more pressure associated with those jobs. Tend to be more demanding. But you look at this. There are teacher shortages in most places. It's not acute here, but we're feeling it. There are parts of the country where urban school departments are feeling a real strong pinch because people don't want to go into the teaching profession. The Army last year had its worst recruiting year in the last 50 years. Yep. So all the branches of the military service have been hurting for recruits. And there are other examples, but I don't know. There's been some kind of cultural change. It's hard for me. I don't think anybody has a real grip on it right now, but there's public interest polling has depicted, changes in values among the Gen Zers, right? The early kids, young folks who are in their early 20s, and they seem to be less interested in those types of things, which I'm not sure there's a whole lot of good in those trends. It is a little, you need people to step up and serve the public, and do
Kids
to
these
work
days.
for these. Yeah, well, it's not.
Well, money is important, but
it's not. It's not
the motivator for people to become cops. Shouldn't be anyway.
No, it shouldn't. I get the whole whole
It's a
thing with
reality,
kids these days,
but-
and sometimes that's overstated, right? It
Right.
always
Yeah,
used
I
to
agree.
be like for Gen Xers like Chris and me, right? So it always hear, wow, these kids aren't they're lazy or whatever, and I think that was not the case at all.
No.
And I don't think you hear that anymore, right? So there's always that refrain, but when you see the staffing shortages now, and just like the lack of interest in some things that are about participating in civic institutions, and it's just the trends are. It's hard to read a whole lot of good in those trends. I don't mean to sound so pessimistic about it, but and like people can grow up and they can sort of figure out what's important to them as they grow older, and maybe those trends start to flip. But like right now, it's not encouraging.
So we're speaking with New Bedford Mayor Jon Mitchell. Why don't we take a break while we ponder the winnowing staffing and resources of municipal government, and we'll be right back.
I don't mean to sound so dire.
No.
Welcome back to South Coast Tonight. I'm Marcus Farrow.
And I'm Chris McCarthy.
We're still here with New Bedford Mayor Jon Mitchell. We asked him to leave. He wouldn't.
Now call security.
You got into the
Thanks,
candy.
John.
You got into the candy.
Appreciate you coming by.
I don't want to dime you out to your wife, but he's into the candy over here.
I'm already starting. I was like, "Are you guys eating this Starburst?" Oh, really? You're not?
We're filming him eating it.
So tomorrow, this is important because you vetoed those 3 ballot questions. The one that would, essentially ask people if they want to gut the CPA Act because a city councilor got phone calls at some point. Another is reducing the mayoral term from 4 years to 2 years, and the other is should the city pass an ordinance related to rent stabilization. So. You vetoed all 3 of them. You wrote a spirited letter to the city council explaining your reasons why. A few of them responded in kind. But by my count,
They didn't have the same eloquence, though, but or thrust.
So they're up for a vote tomorrow. By my count, I think they're all going to fail. But we'll see. I think the CPA one's definitely DOA. The 4 year to 2 year mayoral term seems just again DOA, just based on statements by city councilors on how they're going to vote on these. And the rent stabilization one seems less certain, but I know that there's some councilors that are on the fence, so it might depend on what decision they come to when they walk through the door that evening. But which is no way to run a government, but yeah, it might just be something you struggle with internally, right. And I don't know. But what's your feeling on how these are going to go tomorrow?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've had a number of good, constructive conversations with councilors over the last few weeks about this, and I tried to lay out in that veto letter where I stood on each of them, which is both on procedural as well as substantive grounds opposing those measures. And the first 2 you mentioned, the Community Preservation Act, as well as the term of mayor. Those are things that the voters fairly recently, especially on the 4-year term, voted on. And legally binding referenda. Right?
Yeah.
So their proposal to put non-binding referenda on those 2 issues kind of begs the question, well, didn't the voters just decide this, right?
Yes.
The ink's barely dry on the 4-year term. And then there's the CPA, and I think the rent control measure. And look, I totally get that. It is hard to find housing. It's hard to find a housing that's within one's budget, and we see it all the time. Prices have started to level off, but not a ton. And so a policy that in effect caps rent is a very tempting solution, right? It's like, why not? So just to make sure that people aren't can find a house or an apartment to live in. I get it. Like, everybody wants their fellow man or woman to have shelter, right?
Of course.
It's a basic need. The problem is, and it's complicated, a little more complicated, is that it's been tried in lots of places and it has failed everywhere.
Right.
That's just it. And the reason is, and as we've been through it and took pains to spell this out in the letter, that the government, with the narrow exception of public housing, is not in the housing business, right? And the private sector is. And if you're in the private sector, you build housing, you make housing available to people if you think you can do it profitably. But if the government's saying we're going to limit how much money you can make by capping the rent, then you'd say, well, I'm going to go build my housing somewhere else. And that would just exacerbate the problem, right? It would make housing less attainable. So the answer is the one that I think that we're trying to promote in our comprehensive housing plan, which is that we do everything we can to increase the housing supply to facilitate investment that increases the housing supply and to lower permitting barriers wherever they may be found, to get more vacant properties back on the market more quickly. Every city has a certain number of vacancies at any point, right? And ours is a lot lower than it. Our number's a lot lower than it used to be. But there are some ways of getting some more on the market, and that doesn't really require a whole lot of government investment, right? It's just the housing's already there. So it's those things and a number of other levers that we've been pulling. The other important point that and this wasn't brought up by the council, but it's there in our plan, and that is the housing challenges, the pressures are regional in scope, right? Our region's different from other regions, but within our region, it's the same problem. The cost of housing doesn't honor the housing market in our region doesn't honor the municipal boundaries, right? So the reality is New Bedford has almost over 90% of the rental units within Greater New Bedford. And so it's often tempting, I think, for folks in our suburbs to say, well, this is New Bedford's problem. It's not New Bedford's problem. It's a regional problem, and we do need to work on it regionally. And I think we're never going to get to a point where we feel like we've got our arms around it until we've got everybody on board.
Speaking with New Bedford Mayor Jon Mitchell, so after these questions are effectively vetoed, is that, you think, enough momentum for you to make your announcement for re-election?
Wow, I was wondering
well done.
Chris, he gets an A for that one.
He does.
There's a lot of misdirection there.
Really well
done. I was
done.
like, whoa, I'm like, my wheels are turning. I'm getting geared up for another housing policy question. And, and there he goes, right?
Yeah, very well done.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Well,
why not? Just leave it for Burgo. Just leave it for Linda.
So
why not? Why not?
No, I haven't. I haven't made any announcements yet, as you guys know.
Will you, after these questions are vetoed, call Linda and say 2-0?
No, I will not do that.
Please, no. But the reality of it is that these questions just appeared. The city council never talked to you about them.
No.
Councilor Burgo told us he purposely avoided talking. We didn't want to hear the bad news. Had they come to you, you would have told them the same things, but it would have saved a lot of time.
Yeah, and
they effectively wasted an awful lot of time.
Yeah, and look, I mean, one might say, well, it sparked a public conversation, but you wonder, like, how constructive the conversation was, right? You're talking about, in the case of the CPA and the 4-year mayoral term, things that had been recently settled, right? And so, there's a stirring up of things that had been widely debated before in the context of binding referenda. And on this matter of rent control, the problem there is that putting aside whether the referendum is binding, it's just a complex subject, and it's just very tempting to say we're going to cap your rent. Of course, who wants to pay more rent than they have to, right?
Right.
But it's a lot more complicated than that, and that was frankly left out of the discussion.
Non-binding ballot questions. Everybody want free ice cream.
Right. It's a cruel hoax. Right. I mean, really is. As it gets warmer, it feels more like Nicaragua around here, really. Instability in government, confiscation of property. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Next we'll be growing bananas.
Banana Republic.
Right, there you go.
Yeah. But that was our fault, right? It's Banana Republic. That was America's fault, right? No, I mean, it was because at the behest of United Fruit. That's why they're called Banana Republic.
Although I think most of those bananas were shipped to Europe, really.
Okay. Sure. Western interests, we'll call it. Let's take a break.
1420 WBSM, New Bedford's News Talk Station.
300.
Get hot!
As a veteran of the United States military, I can finally get the opportunity to enjoy special events, like a date with my wife, or going out together with my family and friends, things that we couldn't afford, thanks to VetTix. Every empty seat at a concert, a game, motorsports, or a play is a missed opportunity to say thanks to a veteran and service member. We can help. We can give our veterans a special event where they too can create their own cherished memories. Find out how by visiting www.vettix.org. That's www.vettix.org. Find out how you can make a difference in a veteran's life.
I'm a wife and the mother of 2 kids, and I've got a good job.
Bye, Mom. See you, Mom.
A pretty important job. Because of my family and my job, I really care about this neighborhood. It's a good neighborhood. Yes, there's some crime. And when I drive to work, like now, I realize that some people here don't trust the police. So the police should be reaching out to this community, and this community should reach out to the police. That's the way to make this a safer place. And when I get to work in the precinct house and put on my uniform, I can tell you as a police officer that this department is reaching out to the community, and the community is doing its part. We're building partnerships. This should be happening everywhere. This is how we can all be safer. Get involved. Start the conversation.
Start the conversation and help stop crime. To learn the 5 things you can do, go to ncpc.org/prevent violent crime. A message from the National Crime Prevention Council and the Bureau of Justice Assistance.
Have your voice heard right now on South Coast Tonight. Call 508-996-0500 or send an app chat message on the WBSM app. Now, back to Chris and Marcus.
Welcome back. Welcome back to the show. I'm Marcus, 508-996-0500. But we're actually going to take calls later because you got to talk to Mayor Mitchell earlier in the day about your streetlights. So,
and that's fine. People should call in about their street light. We're going to get.
Or they could call your office. What's that?
Call my office, but they called about a street light on Willard Street. And we're going to get.
He's going to do it himself. He told me he's going to get a bucket truck and a hard hat. He's going to go up there.
No.
I remember a few years ago when he was telling me a story about painting his house. I got worried about you on the ladder.
Yeah.
I don't want you.
I've got my neighbors. I get a little worried about that.
Yeah,
I get a little worried. Part of me, I'm cleaning my gutters.
That was the thing.
Yeah, it's probably not a good idea.
Council president's going to kick the ladder.
Right. You know, it would be a tough obituary.
I know you were talking about Rob Ford earlier. I mean that.
Oh yeah.
Rob Ford.
I couldn't believe a Rob Ford reference in 2023. That was something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Too bad he wasn't around to believe it.
He's just a poster child for a recall provision, wasn't he?
Yeah. Rob Ford was the mayor
Although
of Toronto.
It's amazing you had to go that far away when we've had one literally right next door.
Yeah. Well, kind of next door.
He's now a New Hampshire resident.
Yeah. I mean, but Rob Ford, there was no recall provision in Toronto's city charter.
Yeah.
Right.
So, they were stuck with him.
Rob Ford smoked crack while he was in office.
And admitted doing it.
And admitted
Right.
to it, yeah. And it'd be one thing if he maybe smoked crack before he got to office and there was some disclosure and maybe he moved on, but
It's like, I smoked
no, it
crack.
was while he was sitting in office.
Like Marion Barry.
Yeah, I don't know what.
Marion Barry, Marion Barry said he was set up, right?
That's
Oh, Marion Barry. Oh, okay.
There was a camera in
Marion
the room.
Barry,
There was a camera in the room.
Mayor
That generally means you're set up.
Mayor of DC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when you go into a room and there's already a camera there, you are being set up. But whether you smoke the crack is really up to you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I could set up a camera right now. I don't think you smoke crack.
No.
Would you?
think about it.
Thanks, Chris.
Would you, John Mitchell?
That's a real high
Will you,
praise.
John Mitchell?
We set some high standards.
You can be confident I wouldn't be.
will you, John Mitchell, commit to not smoking crack?
Right. Maybe he goes the other way.
Yes or no
Boots of
question
dope.
there.
So anyway, it's kind of hard to transition out of that into something, but I do have a topic. I had Will Sennett on a couple weeks ago to talk about the rooming house fire and some of the I guess code violations that may have led up to it. And like lack of sprinkler service and all of that. And a lot of that came down to, I think what he had concluded in his report is a lack of enforcement. And so going forward, I know that there's a lot of rooming houses in the city. I think you said 27 of them. Am I right about that?
We just went through the numbers today. There are actually 29 that are still open as rooming houses. So they've whittled the list down a little bit because some have gone out of the business.
And some are.
Does that include sober houses too? Is that how you guys categorize them? Not to get too deep into the weeds, but
yeah. So I think the terminology gets a little confusing and what's a sober house and what isn't. But yeah, the ones that are sober houses tend to be rooming houses. They're single occupancy room arrangements, right? Someone lives in a room and there's a common kitchen, right? Common bathrooms and all that. That's the.
But what I'm the point I'm trying, what I wanted to ask about is seeing as this happened and there seems to be some issues of code enforcement. What is the city going to do moving forward to try to make this a little bit more preventable?
Yeah, so there are a couple of things to unpack. So there's like any building, rooming houses are subject to fire inspection, and there are certain rules that apply to rooming houses that apply to other places, other apartment buildings, other types of apartment buildings having to do with fire escapes and means of egress and fire alarms, hardwired fire alarms, and other things. And then there is the city adopted a state law that requires rooming houses, in particular these single occupancy room arrangements, facilities, to have sprinkler systems, right? So when it came to code violations like fire escapes and such, the reporting was not accurate by the New Bedford Light. So there was a big error, which they have corrected. So you'll see that in the New Bedford Light. And Matt Ferrer at the Standard Times pointed this out, not explicitly, but if you read through his piece, you'll see why. But the city had, the New Bedford Light made a to-do out of a whistleblower email that was sent to me and to Chief Kruger saying this place is a death trap, right? And so that was in July of last year, and the person listed 4 things that he thought were wrong, having to do with the door being blocked and the fire alarms, right? Smoke alarms, a couple of other things. The fire department, this was what was left out of the New Bedford Light piece. The fire department was there the next day correcting it, and then had gone back there 2 other times thereafter. So there were no open code violations there, and that was just very. When the Bedford Light ran that story, all the other reporters who had asked the same questions and who had gone away saying, "Oh, look, the city was on top of it," they all came back and said, "Were you lying to us?"
Sure.
Like, sort of the TV station. So I was not happy with as you can tell by the tone of my voice,
Right.
I'm not happy with the reporting. It just I couldn't believe that was left out of the story.
Yeah.
When it comes to sprinkler systems, we've been giving the rooming houses time to comply. The reason you do that is sprinkler systems cost a bundle.
Right.
So in the case of the Royal Crown Apartments on Acushnet Ave, the building that burned, the sprinkler system there, which they had, had their permit, just had received their permit to put in, they were moving toward that, would have cost them $80,000 and then some additional funds to run a second high pressure water line from the street, so it required the digging up the street. So close to $100,000 just to do that work. So it's not like, they're having their bathroom tiled, right? It's a big project. And so we do give them time to do it. So of the 29 now that have that are rooming houses in the city, 15 have sprinkler systems, and then there's like another 10 that are in compliance that are working toward it, and then there's like a couple of other ones that have been non-compliant, and it'll be more to come out on this later, but we're going to be ratcheting up the pressure on them. They're already getting fined and such. So we want to get all of them up to a point where they're sprinkled, right? And then, I do think, even though I think the fire department does a good job in keeping up with code enforcement, I do think we treat them, I think the gap there is we treat the rooming houses like other apartment buildings, which is to say, the fire department's on it, but it's not on it any more than it is any other, in terms of code enforcement, any other apartment building. We probably do need to do more in the way of more frequent inspections of those places, because you have a very marginalized population in those buildings. They are in many ways residences of last resort, and we're starting to see that now. The people who are displaced, some of the people who are displaced by the fire still don't have housing, right? So they tend not to be employed, and a lot of them are on Social Security, and so we're trying to on the one hand, we don't want to push so hard that we're pushing people out onto the street, because that's a real risk.
That's a real problem, right?
You can't have unsafe conditions, so it is going to require more intense code enforcement, and we're getting there with the sprinkler system. So we got a little more than half of them are sprinklered now.
We're going to take a break, and then we'll finish out the hour strong. Welcome back. I'm Marcus Farrow.
We're here with Mayor Jon Mitchell. John, we've had...
That's Chris McCarthy.
Chris McCarthy. Thank you.
Doesn't recognize that voice.
Right.
He doesn't have a name.
I don't have a name.
Who is that?
They never gave me a name. Michael Scott. They never gave me a name. John, before we finish out the hour, real quick, any updates on the industrial park that you have a very ambitious on? 'Cause you got to grow the economy. You've said it. Yep. Anything on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's been slow going,
right?
Because first, it's a really complicated project.
Sure.
That required us taking land that was set aside as parkland and having the legislature approve its removal, and then exchanging with that land a roughly equal amount of land, actually greater, in South Dartmouth that the city owns. Right, it's
the gun range.
You don't have to do all that to develop land, and then by the time you were prepared to move forward, then we had this slight problem with pandemic and inflation and all that stuff, so it chilled investor interest. But
sure.
we are going to develop that site, and so right now we're doing a market study to sort of figure out what our sweet spot is, right? The problem is that we probably don't have developers who will want to buy the entire thing all at once to develop it. So it's probably going to be bitten off in chunks, right? And then the other thing we're trying to do is just see if we can rearrange the site so that we don't have to do nearly as much work to realign the golf course, and so just to save the city money. So I think we're going to see a pathway out. Probably by summer, probably have a little more to say about that.
You told me on the break you were going to pave over the golf course.
There's an hour of phone calls.
We could put a water park. We could put a water park.
Oh, my God, the water park.
The water park. There we go, yeah. So,
Kids have been sledding there for years. Why not a water park, right?
I almost died there sledding in high school.
Everybody's got a story there.
Everyone does, right? Crazy.
I didn't sled there. It's too bad. Won't have an opportunity to now.
You're still young.
I could, yeah. I guess I could sled there. But it doesn't snow anymore.
We're not with global warming.
Because the world's ending.
The world is ending.
So we're in dire straits
We're
here.
going to end on that cheery note.
Right.
The show.
Yeah. Well, so is there anything else? Because I've sort of
nothing
run
else.
out of
Nothing
stuff.
else. There's absolutely nothing going on. We're just we're looking to pick up more hobbies.
How's the birdhouse building going? Cleaning his gutters, building birdhouses.
Yeah. My dog's doing great. Thanks for asking.
What kind of dog?
I have a Labrador Retriever. Yeah, she's awesome.
It's like really stereotypical for an elected official, isn't it? I feel like it is.
I didn't mean for it. Well, my kids would pick
The Mitchell family, like the Yellow Bean catalog.
They wanted something else. No, we're getting a Labrador Retriever.
Yellow Bean.
Dad's got an election to win.
The Yellow Bean catalog came to the house, and now
the
he
next
goes,
one we'll get something more menacing than a
a Rottweiler or a pit bull. Natalie said, Yellow Bean catalog came. She goes, look, the Mitchell son is a Christmas card. I go, no, that's Yellow Bean. Honey, you're all wrong.
No, my dog's great. She's awesome. She's a big listener of the program. Tunes in right about now.
You don't have a cat?
We don't have a cat.
Okay.
You know he walks his cat?
I do walk my
You walk
cat.
it with a leash on?
Yeah. I walk my cat, yeah.
That's good exercise.
She enjoys it. She enjoys it. It's mostly around the yard.
Scratch you later?
It's mostly around the yard. Yeah. She doesn't scratch me. No. The thing
After you walk her?
The thing is, it's good that she's on a leash. Otherwise, she would have killed probably quite a bit of birds.
Oh, sure.
And so, she enjoys it. Yeah. She demands it now. So that's what's going on in my life.
You know what? I can't. I've been on the radio so much over my time in office. The first time we just sort of like run out of stuff, right? We should have ordered at the 99. I walked in there smelling the 99. I was like, I got to have some whenever they're blowing out the window.
Yeah.
You ate Starburst.
I've been eating Starburst the entire time.
So Jon Mitchell likes Starburst. We know that now.
Well, he's not the first. I will tell you, we have them in my office. These are not the first Starbursts I've had today.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because we didn't actually offer him the Starburst.
No,
he took it.
I helped myself.
He asserted himself.
He said,
We're
"Can I
all
have the
about
Starburst?"
transparency.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Can I?
Do we have to fill out an ethics thing? Was that more than $25? I don't know.
If I keep going at this rate, we'll cross the ethics threshold maybe in about 2 hours of Starburst.
Just putting away these Starbursts.
Yeah.
Folks, you know how to get your streetlight fixed now.
Yeah.
Drop off an envelope of Starburst.
No, that's all it takes. That's all it takes.
So what about M&Ms? What is your other favorite candies, John?
Well, no, I got a question because those are the red all like the red and pink colors. What's your favorite Starburst color?
You know, I kind of like the really
Free is the one.
dark red one.
The dark reds are good. I like those if there's one left.
Oh yeah, there's one. Yeah, there's one there.
Those, if there's one left.
This is what your show has come to.
I know. If I've mailed
Do you have
it
any
in.
more guests tonight?
Yeah. We got
We have someone from the New Bedford Light.
Yeah,
actually.
Colin Hogan.
Oh yeah. Okay.
He's gonna make stuff up.
Yeah, apparently.
I'm joking.
Yeah, that's it. We've definitely phoned it in the last few minutes, but we've had fun. Mayor Jon Mitchell.
But Johnny, you're gonna phone it in for the next 4 years.
There you go.
Your employee
That's
wants
good.
Flip that in. You're looking at
That's
Melissa
really
to see
good.
whether she betray